welcome to another 7 minutes or less. Now, until recently I'd never played a Mega Man game, but with the announcement of Mega Man being in the new Smash Bros game, I thought it was about time I gave the series a shot. With how many games there are for the franchise, I wasn't sure which one to go for, so I had a look at what was available on the Wii Virtual Console and asked a few friends. In the end, I went for Mega Man X. The X series takes place about 100 years after the original series, and while it has its own story, antagonist, protagonist and all that sort of thing, it still follows the same basic gameplay structure as the original series. But is the game any good? Well, let's take a look. Mega Man X revolves around X, the successor of Mega Man. In a nutshell, bad guy is bad and must be stopped, so you travel through various places to get rid of bad guy's subordinates, and X gains a new power with each one he defeats, until he can then go after Mr. Bad Guy himself and save the day. There is a lot more backstory about who Mr. Bad Guy is, what's going on, and why X feels personally responsible for what's happened, but that wasn't explained in-game, and I had to look it up, so everything was put into perspective. Wikipedia for the win. As you can see, Mega Man X is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. At the start you have 8 stages to choose from, and in each one you blast your way through minions to get to the boss at the end. It did this side of things very well, and each of the stages are unique, well-designed areas with decent platforming. There are some pods lying around that give you certain abilities, but the most important ones come from bosses. There are a few things to find in each stage, so exploration is rewarded even if it is a little bit limited. Thing is, as you could do the 8 stages in whatever order you liked, there was little in the way of a difficulty curve. All the stages were pretty difficult, especially the bosses, but I found it was just plain cheap, to the point I was facing a pod guardian and died despite the fact I didn't even touch him. It happened a lot throughout the game. When you run out of lives, you're given a password so you can return to that stage of the game, and all the upgrades you found are kept, but you always go back to the stage select screen, so if you die on a boss, you have to go through the entire level all over again. I faced every boss and died on many occasions, mainly because a lot of the time success or failure can come down to dumb luck, a situation I've come to call Candy Crush syndrome. Some of the bosses really drag on, and I almost gave up on several occasions because of how frustrating things had become, but I didn't want to abandon it just yet, even though having to go all the way through each stage every time had become a bit of a chore. After a few more attempts, my perseverance paid off and one of the little bastards died, and I got myself a new weapon. This new weapon made things a tad easier, and it wasn't long before others fell, increasing my arsenal further. It was at this point that something weird happened. I was having fun. Defeating the other bosses wasn't a piece of cake, but at least it felt as though I was making progress and I was enjoying the game more. Soon all the bosses fell to my awesomeness and I went after Mr. Bad Guy. The plot progressed, there was a rather sad scene involving one of X's companions, a few more bosses including having to refight one of the previous bosses, and then came across my favourite of the bosses, the mechanical spider. Even though it took a number of attempts, it was a fun and interesting fight, and of course, he soon fell too. Continuing on, there was the second stage with another previous boss, but I died and noted the password. Later on, when I entered the password, I started at the beginning of the first stage, which meant I'd have to go all the way through that stage again, including having to refight all the bosses to get to the second stage. I thought, you're having a giraffe. I may have liked the spider boss, but like hell am I going to refight it over and over again to hopefully get a tad further, assuming I don't get knocked off a platform and killed by some bastard on the way there. It was at this point I decided I'd had enough. I'll probably give it another try at some points, but for now, no. Normally I would talk about combat, but as this game's combat is mostly a case of look in the direction of what you want destroyed and keep firing until it goes boom, there's not much to talk about, so I'll mention the weapons you can find instead. I actually never used most of them because I found there were 2 or 3 that were pretty effective, so stuck with those. My favourite would definitely be the wind tunnel thing, but the homing missiles, flamethrower and freeze gun had their uses. Each gun gets a unique charge shot once you've got far enough through the game, and they can be pretty good, but your arm cannon's charge shot was quite powerful and effective, so the other weapons' charge shots tended to just be used for the novelty of them every now and then. It's still great having a few different weapons to choose from, as not all enemies could be defeated by just standing there and firing. The visuals are pretty good even for a 20-plus-year-old game. As I mentioned, each stage's design varies greatly, and there weren't any parts that just seemed copy-pasted from another level and given a slight colour change, not as far as I could tell anyway. The only downside was that there were occasions where I wasn't sure if something was a ledge I could climb on or part of the background, so had to go for it and hope for the best, but luckily those moments were few and far between. I'd heard that the Mega Man games had pretty decent soundtracks, so I was expecting a lot, and the game certainly delivered on that front. There are a lot of decent tracks, I even ended up humming several of them after I stopped playing. It seemed to have a decent number of tracks too, so it's even more surprising when most of them are great catchy tunes. Not much else to say about it really. It has all the aspects of a great game, but the mixture of cheap difficulty and having to redo large sections ended up taking the fun away. I effectively got the game for free due to reward points from registering games online, which I could convert into Wii points for the Virtual Console, so if you're in a similar situation, definitely check the game out, but if not, see if a friend has it and play theirs instead. It is a good game and I can understand why it has such a large following, but I won't be rushing out to buy another Mega Man game anytime soon. See you next time. Additional. So I gave the game another try, refought the spider boss, went through stage 2, got to the boss which wasn't as interesting as the spider, defeated it and went into stage 3. I refought more of the previous bosses, one of which royally took the piss with his tactics, but I soon managed to beat him anyway. I ran out of lives later during the third stage and got a new password. Out of curiosity I reset the game and entered that password. Where did I start? Right at the beginning of the first stage. Once again, they are having a giraffe. I considered finding all the health extensions from the 8 main stages, but the thought of going through them all again gave me a headache. Maybe one day, but certainly not today.